Today I'm here with Peter Nesbitt, and Peter's been a long-time modeler here in the Ottawa area and a member of the NMRA, and actually is heavily involved in many of the different operating layouts in the city. He recently moved out to the west end of the city and to a new house, and he's in the process of building his model railroad again. So I was just going to ask you, Peter, maybe you can tell me a little bit about your railroad in terms of what its name is and what the concept is.
Well, the concept for the railroad goes back to the early 1960s when Ottawa first decided to have their map where any railway that was within 100 miles of Ottawa got on the Ottawa map.
Mm-hmm. That's the Ottawa
Valley Associated Railroaders. So we ended up picking a theme where the railroad originates in Braeside, Ontario, where my father was born.
Mm-hmm.
And it was originally going to be a short line railroad that ran up sort of beside the Ottawa River to Renfrew, and then followed the Bonnechere River Valley up through Eganville to Deacon.
Right.
Thus the name, the Bonnechere and Braeside Railway.
So this Ottawa Valley Association of Railroads is something that's been part of our community for quite a while, I take it?
Started in 1960-61.
Yeah.
And has grown and prospered ever since, with close to 200 members out for dinner meetings.
Yes. And there's no real model railroad clubs per se in the city, but there's operating groups that get together quite often.
There's a number of operating groups and a couple of big modular groups as well.
Mm-hmm. And so when you decided to build your railroad, I guess you had a plan to make it for operations in mind, so a bunch of people could come out and have some fun.
Well, certainly this version of the railway and the last one that was built in the other house both had operations, and with the number of people involved, probably 4 or 5 operators.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the earlier versions in much smaller spaces were going to be just primarily sole one operator railroads.
Yeah. But yours here is, how many could you comfortably have in the room operating?
I would expect we could probably run with 4 or 5, and that would, a normal operating session would have 2 westbound freights, 2 eastbound freights, a passenger train in each direction, a gas electric making a run up and back, and then the logging branch would generate 1 or 2 log trains to the sawmill.
Yes.
And then probably somebody to do the switching in Braeside Yard, and to run the sort of the transfer or interchange runs from Braeside to Arn Prairie, where the railroad interchanges with Eastern Ontario.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I noticed the Bonnechere and Braeside railroad's a pretty unique scale. Something you don't see too often.
No, the original version of the railway was a branch line in HO scale.
Yes.
Later on, the management of the Bonnechere and Braeside realized that the costs of building the railway in standard gauge were getting too high, especially through some of the hilly areas around Eganville, and they decided they would redo the railway and do it all in 3-foot narrow gauge.
Yes.
And that was all completed in the early 1930s and operating well ever since.
So in scale, that's ON3?
I'm modeling at an O scale, which is 1 to 48,
yeah.
3 foot, which is then commonly known as ON3.
Ah, okay. And it's steam era?
Steam area, yeah. We're modeling the fall of 1935.
Yes.
So it's all steam.
Uh-huh. I noticed that your layout is, what's the size of the room that it's in?
It's about 350 square feet.
Okay, so it's not an L shape, I guess.
The room is L-shaped.
Yeah. That's kind of interesting to try to fit a railroad into an L-shaped room.
It was a little bit of a challenge. I've ended up with one aisle that's a little narrower than one I would have liked, but yeah. That's one of the compromises we sometimes end up having to make.
Sure, that's for sure. And you also have a couple of levels.
Yes, it's 2 level.
Yeah.
This time with the bigger space, we were able to run all the way around the room enough to not have to have a helix.
Right.
which is, from an operational viewpoint, I prefer the not having the helix.
Right. Yeah, it makes it a lot easier. Instead of standing around waiting for the train to come out at the next level, you can actually follow it.
We can follow it, although there is a long tunnel through and around behind me,
Yes.
where the train does disappear for a fair while, but still less than it would be if it was any helix.
Well, maybe we could go and have a little bit of a tour, and then we can see what's happening. It's a point-to-point railroad, I take it.
It's pure point-to-point.
Yeah.
There is no facility for continuous operation.
Okay, well, let's go down to the main station, and we'll see what's happening from there. So, Peter, here's the start of your point-to-point layout. What's the name of this town?
This is the home base, I guess, the
Yeah.
main yards in Braeside, Ontario.
Right?
And there's a bit of a switching lead far down to the left.
Okay, so you have the lead, and can you tell me a little bit about the operations here? You got a yard, which is what, 4 tracks?
We have a 4-track yard,
Yeah,
arrival departure tracks,
yes.
full engine facilities.
Okay, let's just have a look at the engine. This is where your station will be located. And you have a nice large turntable there so you can turn your locomotives.
Yes, and there'll eventually be a 3-stall roundhouse in this area,
Yeah,
and a model of the coaling tower here.
yes.
And of course there'll be a water tank to go along with the sanding facility.
Uh-huh. And down at this end, you were talking about your yard throat. So this comes down to here.
We do have the switch lead coming out
In your
here.
switch lead. So this really means a lot of back and forth, I take it, when you're pulling cars out to build trains. Is that the idea here? Or?
Yes. Yes, the trains are built here,
Yeah.
and it's a fairly short switching lead, so they can only pull about 3 cars at one time.
Right.
So it does mean the operator at Braeside will be fairly busy because you can't pull large cuts of cars at one time to build the trains on.
Yeah. So it's a bit of a puzzle to get into the car you want and to build the train.
Hopefully it won't be too big a puzzle in that the plan would normally, the operating program should have cars somewhat in the right tracks in terms of what's outbound, eastbound, or westbound, or what is likely to stay in the yard as an empty.
So what you're planning here is that with these 4 classification tracks is to have pretty much the yard ready to go in terms of the outbound trains. Is that the idea? Like what track 1 would be a particular train number, track
Not
2?
necessarily a train number, but track 1, this one would normally be all the westbound cars.
Right.
Track 2 would probably be the eastbound cars.
Mm-hmm.
And tracks 3 and 4 could holding some empty cars or spillover from tracks either 1 and 2.
Okay. So from here, I guess what happens is the train moves out to the right at the far end. Is that correct?
Yes, everything's going to be leaving from the right-hand side out of Braeside.
Yeah, on the lower level here. And it has 3 tracks that it potentially goes
The first turnout we're seeing right here
Yeah,
is the primary turnout to decide whether you're taking the front track, which is going to continue then westbound
right?
up to Renfrew, Eganville, Deacon, and other points west.
Yes.
And the taking the left-hand track out of that turnout brings you into a 3-track hidden staging area operation known as our Pryor, which is the interchange with the Eastern Ontario.
Okay, so that's the tracks in the bottom underneath there. Now you got a really interesting swing gate here. 2 different levels. It just lifts up and in there, doesn't it?
Up and in, yes.
Up and in. And I guess there's a locking mechanism that brings it over, eh?
Yes.
I'll let you do that, just so we can see what's happening here. I guess in a large scale, it's fairly easy to get these tracks to line up and not worry about gauging too much. Or how did you manage to get it so it's a good fit?
By laying all the track in place with the bridge locked in position, then coming back afterwards and actually then cutting the rail
Okay,
and the plywood.
gotcha.
However, we still have to live with the humidity,
Yeah,
and there are some changes with the temperature and humidity. The expectation is by the time we get all the senior on there and stabilize everything, that will
won't move as much.
reduce some of the movement.
Yeah. Now this is an area that you've, it's pretty unique right along the wall here. This is your, how your levels, I guess, are start to formulate themselves, right? You're starting on this lower level.
Starting on the lower level.
And you're coming along through a series of tunnels. And right here you've got some rock work, I see. That's done with celluclay?
It's done with celluclay.
And so it's all just hand applied, and then you add the dirt and paint colors to it to get the effect you want?
Yes, throughout the technique taught by the master, Chris Lyon.
Oh, gee. And here you've got a waterfall, eh?
You've got a waterfall and a low bridge.
Yep. Lower bridge.
There's a bit of a rapids at the bottom of it.
Yep. You have some stones and looks cold. Then you're coming into a curve and there's a siding here, and you've got some mock-ups. That's a good idea to figure out what's going to happen in there, eh?
For all the buildings that we had kits that were not yet built, we made mock-ups so that we would know exactly where everything was going to go and be able to work the track around the different structures so that it would eventually fit.
Okay, so this is going to be like what kind of building is going into this area right here?
We have a general store and
store.
Some gas pumps, and then behind it is an automobile sort of repair, oil change.
Yeah.
And in the backdrop here, in the background, we have will be a small lumber yard.
Right.
And this is all in the little tiny corners of Castleford.
Mm-hmm. So moving out of Castleford, I see you have another doorway here, and another mechanism to get the track out of the way so you can walk in and out.
The track sections are both removable.
Yeah.
So during the construction phase, they can be out of there and the door open to the workshop.
Yes.
Once the railway is finished, those two sections will go back in as they are at the moment.
Yep.
And the door closed, and hopefully never opened again, but there if ever needed for an emergency exit.
Yes.
And now we're coming into Renfrew.
This is Renfrew in here.
And Alex Pinkley is in the process of building a stock pens.
Oh, it's quite large, eh? It runs all the way to the back.
Yes, because we're going to be shipping cattle and sheep out of the stock pens.
It must be fun to work in here. Is it a lift out, or does he have to actually get in there?
No, it's still lift outable, and he does all the work on it on the workbench.
Okay.
And we've actually installed a sound module so that when we're operating sessions, we will have the cows and sheep complaining about their treatment, but
too bad, so sad.
yes.
So you move out past the cattle pen and you're traveling further along, and then you're coming into another.
This is all still part of Renfrew.
It's all part of Renfrew, so it runs the whole.
It runs the whole length of this lower level.
Gee, there's a really nice station, and you got a finished kit in here of a water tower.
We've got an unusual water tower.
Yeah.
Station. A few residential buildings to go in.
Yeah, it looks like a passing siding here too, eh?
Yes. Every town has a passing siding.
Yeah. So you haven't got much space between the bottom and the top, eh? So you just have enough to get your operator view in there, and that's how it's going to work. You can get in there and uncouple and.
Yeah, ideally we would have liked a little bit more space, but that's again one of the compromises given.
Yeah. Very nice. And then over here you've got a bit of a
I have a
structure kit that you're going to put in the corner here.
Yeah, it's an old kit from York. It's Ironworks.
Yes.
That's to be constructed. There is a mock-up that fits in there to help design the space.
Mm-hmm. and then it leaves the town of Renfrew, and then off it goes through and into a tunnel. And then you're under the layout, and everything moves around, I guess, and then comes out at this tunnel. So you have a bit of a portal here for viewing.
Yes. Didn't want the track to be completely hidden for too long a run.
Yeah. And so this is looped around the whole room now, and it's cutting back across where you were starting your run from it, but now you're on a higher level. So here's another one of those little portal tunnel scenes. Enters the tunnel on the other side there, and you can see that it looks like the track is protected with a bit of a shield, so in case you get derailments or problems like that, nothing will fall down.
That's the plan. A bit of just a little bit of cardboard will save anything from hitting the ground.
Also, too, I guess it's good for sound barrier as well, to some degree.
Probably will help a little bit, but it's primarily just to keep things from getting to the ground.
So now we're back across the bridge on the upper level.
Bridge on the upper level.
Yeah. So you're able to accomplish quite a bit with fairly thin space between the wall and the edge of the layout. It's not very wide here.
No.
Probably less than a foot.
About 10 inches.
Yeah. Adding the painted backdrop right against the track, though, makes it look like you've got quite a large scene here. So you've got a bit of scenic block here. It's very nice. Got all your track covered with tape so you don't get junk on it while you're working. Gotta keep that track clean.
Well, plaster and cellular clay has a habit of going anywhere and everywhere.
Gets kind of dusty, So that makes for a really nice scene when you consider it's only 10 inches wide. Maybe a foot here. Now you're coming around the corner and there's looks like another siding.
Well, we're now into the outskirts of Eganville.
Mm-hmm.
The Farmers Grain Co-op in the corner.
Yeah.
So we continue into Eganville.
Looks like we got a pit.
We're going to eventually have a sawmill there.
Mm-hmm.
The front track will be for loading sawn lumber and so on, and the back track is the one that goes to the logging branch for the logs coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And we do have sound effects on the railroad.
The old buzzsaw cutting up the lumber. So that's a nice station. Where are we now?
We're still in Eganville.
Yeah.
And we continue to have sound effects, so if you happen to be pulling up your locomotive to get water.
Little gizmos these days,
Just adds another dimension of reality to the railroad to have a little bit of sound.
Mm-hmm. And you got the workings of a main street on the town here.
Yes, we're going to have well, we have the sort of Pete's General Store is, the building is done, the interior is still to go in.
Mm-hmm.
And then behind it is going to be a saloon.
Yeah.
And then just to the left is a hotel and drugstore.
Main street. Lots of activity eventually with cars and people and stuff happening.
And then to the right in the back behind the track we probably have a few backs of buildings with some clotheslines and some fences and backyards.
Yeah, it's like flats, Yeah. Right against the wall.
Yeah, the building will be flats, and then there'll be the backyards and clotheslines and so on.
Mm-hmm. So then we're around the bend at the top level.
And the front track continues on. Silver Creek.
Right. So you got some logging operation on the top level there.
In the back corner, we have a little two-stall engine house for the Shay and the Climax.
Yeah.
And then over in this area, we have 2 tracks for loading the log cars.
Nice.
The logs would arrive there by truck, be loaded onto rail cars to be taken down to the mill in Eganville.
Yeah, so you'll have all that fun of building the loaders and the like for the cars there.
Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. Now out of the town too, there was a track that was on a slight, well, I guess it's on a descending grade a bit, eh? Or just a tiny bit.
It's
fairly
pretty
level.
flat.
It just looks descending.
Yeah, the logging was actually a bit of an upgrade to it, getting back into Silver Creek.
Okay.
As we come around the corner here, we're into Deacon,
Right.
which is the last of the towns that's actually modeled on the railway.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a sort of a transfer or team track in the front.
Yep.
In the back, we have in the corner a turntable, which is actually eventually going to be completely covered up by a Canada Packers.
Mm-hmm.
And just to the right of that would be a small stockyard for the arriving stock for Canada Packers.
Nice.
And just to the left of it, between it and the rock face, will be an ice house,
Mm-hmm.
icing facilities for the reefers coming into Canada Packers.
And you got a golf course now
And we
in
have
the
a golf
background.
course in the background, compliments of Chris.
Yeah, that's cool. And there's a track that's kind of running up and into I guess to the next house, eh? Into the wall there. It's
Well, that's sort of
a lead.
it's a lead sort of a switchback
Yep.
from the main track in Deacon. You have to go back, switch it. The road locomotive would have to pull a cut of cars back into that switchback in order to be able to switch the reefers
Yes.
at the ice house or into Canada Packers.
Gotcha.
There again, the lead is fairly short, so it's only going to be able to move 1 or 2 cars at a time, so that will take a little bit more time to do the switching at that location.
Mm-hmm.
And then moving along a bit more through in Deacon, we do have Binkley Furniture,
Ah.
which was made up by Alex Binkley from some DPN
Mm-hmm.
castings. It's just a couple of inches thick. It's just sort of a false front.
Couple guys having a snooze.
Yes.
Must be their lunch break.
Either that or there's been a bit of an earthquake. We're not sure which.
And over here we have another nice looking building.
And then to the right of that will be a station.
Yeah.
And then the tracks continue to the end to 3-track staging, which is normally Barry's Bay from an operational viewpoint, but it's just the west end staging.
Oh, that's great. So how long have you been working on this?
We moved here in 2009. The first couple of years really was spent more just getting the house and the yard and everything in order and trying to finish off the basement.
Mm-hmm.
So the railroad really only got worked on the last couple of years. We did move the entire railroad from the other house. Some of the fellows gave me a hand, cut it up into manageable pieces and moved the entire railway.
Mm-hmm.
And part of Deacon was able to be reused. Most of Eganville was reused, and all of Braeside was reused, and then the rest had to be built to fit the new L-shaped room.
Wow. Well, it's this exciting progress.
Yeah, well, you might have wondered, they didn't comment on it, why there would be a turntable inside a meatpacking plant.
Okay.
That was designed to be able to turn the steam locomotives from the upper staging tracks without actually having to either manhandle them or run them all the way down to the Braeside turntable. So between operating sessions, then the engine could come out of the staging and just go onto that turntable
And turn.
and be turned, and then the trains restaged for the next operating session.
That's convenient. And yet you don't see it. So it's more for the operation than it is for the reality of the look of the railroad.
That's right, and once the Canada Packers factory gets built,
Mm-hmm.
you would not know there was a turntable there,
Yep.
and it would only be used between operating sessions.
Another railroad in Ottawa, this one in ON3. Goes to show you can have a lot of fun in your own particular scale. It's kind of nice to work in a larger scale. You can see everything.
You can certainly put a lot more detail on the cars, on the structures. It does mean that when you get to structures, the doorknobs and hydrometers are all required because they all become visible in the larger scale.
Yeah. But it also contributes to the wow factor and the reality of what you've created.
Oh yes, as well as the fun of building it. But
Yeah. Becomes three-dimensional art.
yes.
Yeah. Very, very nice. Well, thanks very much for letting me come by and having an opportunity to interview you and show this layout to the folks on my YouTube channel. I know that they always get a kick out of seeing new railroads and what people are doing, and some little things that you're doing may inspire somebody to either go into that particular scale or to consider a particular model that you've created. Thanks a lot.